Hey YouTube, what's up? It's Scarecrow Kaiser here. I am here today to do an updated profile on my Zodiac Time Beast. It's been a little while, and they've changed a lot since you've seen them. In fact, they changed like a lot, like almost immediately after I did that last updated profile, back when just after Try 3 came out. Even like almost immediately, it was updated. So I've been meaning for a while. I play this deck quite often. Well, not like I play a lot of decks, so I don't play every deck exactly often. But I've played this deck in tournaments several times, most of which I've won or placed in the top four or whatever. But the deck runs really well. Zodiac Time Beast is definitely not a bad deck. Somehow, well, I can understand it's not somehow. It's obvious that the regular time leap build is just better and more consistent, so people just disregard it because it's not like the best option there is right now. So somehow that creates like a stigma that it's bad. There's also the thought that a lot of people don't actually know how to play it right or build it right, so they just assume it's bad. There's a lot of things. This deck is not bad. This deck is actually really good. You can sit down with this and play against like any like deck, like any meta deck, and you'll have a good game. You'll even like win quite often, actually. So let's get started with the starting Vanguard, Chronodran. Best starter in the clan all around, and he's a Zodiac. He's just good. He works really well in this deck. Actually, he functions better in this deck than he does the regular build. Into the triggers, we got our 4 Heart Thump and 3 Chrono Volley for a total of 7 crits. So, still a decent number of crits. Next, we've got our 2 Chrono Doze Sheep, our draw triggers. A little bit of draw power helps a lot in the deck. This deck doesn't abuse Urwatar to create card advantage as much as the regular build, so having a little draw power helps. Next, we got 1 Urwatar because he's ridiculously good. If you can make use of him, you might as well have the one in there. So, really good card. And next we have 1 Gear Cat because we can also utilize this card defensively. And our last trigger, we have our 4 heal triggers. Now let's go into the grade 3s next. I feel like it's a better place to start. We have our MVP grade 3 of the deck, the card you always want to ride, Chronojet G. He's a Zodiac versus where the regular one isn't, and he's just the best option to ride anyways. That time leap on stride skill and the power to pump up all your Zodiacs. This card is really strong in this deck. This card is really cool. You don't get to utilize his pumping of the rear guard as much in the time leap build as you do in this build, so it's really cool. Next, we got 2 Chrono Fang Tiger. He's like an alternate grade 3 ride as well as being a Zodiac. You don't really want to ride him, but he's like the next best thing to ride, honestly. So, and he'll let you stride with like anything. Then we have 2 Chrono Fang Gs. He's in here because this deck time leaps to grade 3s a lot, so having him to go into and pick off an opponent's rear guard, like snipe something you don't want them to have, he can be pretty helpful in that regard, as well as he still functions as a grade 3 Zodiac for your drive checks off Lugal Array. And we play a 9th grade 3 in this deck. We play 1 regular Chrono Jet. He's there because you can get pluses off of him using your grade 2, the next card I'm going to talk about. So we don't really need 1 because we can just recycle them and put them back. But into the grade 2s, the card I was just mentioning, Pulsar Shift Bullet Dragon. This card is freaking good in this deck. Most of you play him because he pumps up every time a Chrono Jet Vanguard attacks. So when you're doing like groovy and next stage type things, he'll pump up twice and he'll be a 13 by himself. And then on top of that, you'll throw in the power of his booster. On top of that, you'll throw in the power of the Pegasus in your G zone pumping up, and on top of that, you'll throw in the power from your Chronojet G. So this guy gets pretty big. That +4 actually does quite a bit. Plus, he has this really cool skill that you usually utilize on your first stride turn, where at the end of turn you sacrifice him, and you get to go grab 2 different Chronojets. You add one to hand, call one to rear guard. It varies from situation which one you want to call and which one you want to add, but usually you add the regular Chronojet to your hand to use as stride fodder and leave the other one on the field because it's a Zodiac, so it will be more helpful being an attacking card because it can be pumped. And you can either do something like guard with Rafana, return that Chronojet to the deck and call it like Urwatar for next turn, and then you put a grade 3 back in your deck, making your Lugal Urs more likely to go off. Or your other option is next turn stride a Pegasus and then return that Chronojet you got to your field to the deck, call it 2 grade 2s, and you put back a grade 3 to make your Lugal Ur more active. So this card is pretty cool. And we've mentioned him several times just now, so my favorite grade 2 in the deck, Lugal Ure. This card is really good. It attacks for 11, and if you drive check a grade 3 Zodiac, you can time leap. So he gives you additional attacks and stuff, as well as being a good hitter. Really good card. Next we play 1 Chrono Beat Buffalo. He's just a beat stick, and that's really all we have him in here for, other than the fact that he's a Zodiac. The Zodiacs really mostly just function as beat sticks in this deck, and that's why we're playing him, because he's consistent 11. I used to play the Rabbit. The Rabbit would be inconsistent at times where I didn't have a lot of resources, whereas this guy's always just an 11. Plus, if you had to go first and you ride to a grade 3, you can call him and he'll be able to beat for 11 still, even though he's not a GB actually. And our last grade 2 spot, we're playing 2 Upstream Dragons. Upstream Dragon in this deck, other than just being a decent hitter because he can swing for 13 by himself, his job is to recruit Upstream Dragons, which are really important in like all Chronojet and decks, as well as in this deck. This deck used to suffer a lot from the inability to recycle its resources, and it would kind of burn out. So he was added in here, as well as Tickaway, which we'll be getting to in the grade 1s, to get access to those cards so we can rebuild our triggers, put grade 3s back, just make the deck more consistent and give it more longevity. Into the grade 1s, I'm going to start with him first since we were just talking so much about him. 2 Tickaway Dragons. This card is like so good in any Chronojet deck, but the deck really needed it in here, and I had to change the deck quite a bit to make sure he fit, but he's really good. Then we have our four Zodiac Time Beast Perfect Guards, Akra. You could argue that you would want to play the Counterblast on flipping one more in this deck, but this is a Zodiac deck, so it's also kind of fun, plus there's more combos you can do with her in this deck. And you can manage your Counterblast anyway, usually you just have enough. She's a very cool card that you can get her back from the drop zone by buying another one at a card. And then you combo her later on in the game with your Huanglong to grab one that you've bound, so you get another free perk guard, so pretty cool. And she's a Zodiac, because sometimes that matters for beat sticks and stuff, and paying costs. Next, we got 3 Steam Breath Dragons. I thought I could go down to 2 because I was running 9 grade 3s, but I ended up missing him. Like, there were times I just wanted him so I could, I didn't have Chronojet G, and this guy could let me go grab him, and it just made it more consistent to always be able to stride. And on your first stride turn, you typically want to go into the Pegasus, and if you can keep your grade 3 you have for Pegasus effect to send it back and get 2 grade 2s, and instead stride with this, it's all the better. So next, I'm sure some people might moan when they see this, but we're playing 2 Mellum. She's not being abused in this deck, obviously, as much, because we're not playing History Maker, but she's still a good card. Even if you're not trying to abuse her with the typical time leap tactics, she's still helpful. This deck doesn't generate its card advantage as easily as time leap, so you can use her to go get your Urwatar, use it, save it for next turn when you stride, and then get some card advantage. We'll go into your defensive play with Gear Cat, go grab Heart Thump Worker, or if you've recycled your Chrono Drain, you can go grab that. She's still pretty helpful, especially since she's also an 11 who can swing by herself. She functions really well in the deck without having to be stupid like she is in the Timely build. We have one Meshki, or Meshkia, however you say her name. She's a good target. You don't go under her all the time, but sometimes you want to, on your first stride turn, you need to build up some card advantage or whatever. She's the right play to go into, so you'll time leap your Chrono Drain, grab her, search out your Chrono Jet, draw a card. She can be pretty helpful, so that's why we're playing the one of her. In our last grade 1 spot, we're playing one Jackal. He's our only other Zodiac grade 1 other than our Perfect Guard, and he's just a beat stick, and that's all he's ever really good for. But he's there because sometimes it's just to be another target to discard for the Perfect Guard cost, so you can go search him out. He'll be a beat stick in the front and in the back. Sometimes you go into your last turn and you want to have Zodiac Booster, so that the front row and the back row being powered by Chrono Jet G's skill. So that's why we run him. So that's it for our main deck. Into our G zone. First we have our 3 Pegasus. I used to play 2, and then I decided to throw in one more, and I've actually really liked it. Pegasus is not a bad stride, at all, especially for early game. Usually you're getting card advantage by sitting back a grade 3, getting 2 grade 2s. Usually use his skill to grab a Lugal Ure and 1 Shift Bullet. And the Shift Bullet, it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the front. Often, very, very often, I put him in the back, do my attacks for the turn. At end of turn, it doesn't matter that he's in the back because I'm still going to use his skill and go grab my 2 Chrono Jets. And Pegasus doesn't have to flip another Pegasus, and that's what makes it cool. On the first stride, you typically use Pegasus to flip Pegasus, and later on, after you've done Shift Bolt for your second stride, you can go into another Pegasus and flip something like Huang Long and set it for your Gear Groovy later on, as well as getting that extra power for later on in the game by having them face up. Another early game stride is our Metallica Phoenix. This card is helpful in the deck because it's aggressive and it doesn't use Counterblast. There are some turns where you just don't have Counterblast, but you still want to make a good push, and Phoenix is good at that, as well as it also flips cards. You can use Phoenix to flip a Pegasus for the cost, which obviously then it's face up and powering up your cards, so works well. Then we play one Huang Long. We don't typically stride this, we can if we want, but usually we just end up flipping it with something else and save it for later in the game when we go into our Gear Groovy, and we'll have Gear Groovy copy it, and then we'll use Gear Groovy, grab a Perfect Guard we bound or something, so it functions well. We also play one Altered Dragon. This guy is kind of like a backup plan. For if, let's say, you got unlucky and you don't have a grade 3 or stride fodder, this guy will let you stride with any of your Zodiacs, as well as he can unflip damage and power up and deck thin, so he's mostly a backup plan. Better to stride into him than to stride into nothing. Then we have our 3 next stage, and when we're talking about him, we might as well just throw down the tier Goo Groovy to go with him. Usually we go into a next stage first and then Goo Groovy second. It just works out better that way for a longer game, but sometimes you just want to push harder, so you're going to Gear Groovy first. Yeah. We already know how good those cards are. And our last G unit is one Seabreeze, because this deck is really GB required, so you gotta be able to get there, as well as you can just beat your opponent down because they're trying to play around you and stuff. For the G guards, one Uluru, one Rafana, and 2 header around, so pretty standard G guard lineup for a Gear Chronicle deck. That covers the deck profile in its entirety. thank you guys for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing what new cards we can get for the deck in GB11, which will be like months before now. But it's exciting because playing this deck is fun. It's a fun alternative to playing Time Leap, and I'd like this. And if they ever do find a way to balance out the Time Leap deck, this deck is already pretty good. It's just overshadowed by Time Leap. So if Time Leap got out of the way, you could really get to see Zodiac Time Beast shine. Look forward to that someday. Thank you for watching.